Alright, so we are in the final part of the Company of Heroes 3 map editor course. This section of the course is going to be focusing on deep dives into all of the tools shown through action by creating a small island diorama. And I invite you to follow along with me and dive deeper into these tools. So, without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new mod. Scenario, a handcrafted map. Next. Scenario name, we'll name this Island Life. With the display name Island Life. Sorry, my keyboard is currently broken, so there will be duplicates every once in a while. And we are going to create a new crafted scenario using the 2-player gray block map. Hit next. Mod description, small diorama. And choose the location you want to save your mod in. And finish to get started. Alright, so we are here in our 2-player gray block map. So the next step, now that we are here in our gray block map, is to organize things a bit so that we can get started on the meat of the environment. So I'm just going to pull these both back a bit. There we go. And I'm actually going to bring these down here and then rotate them, because this isn't really for gameplay. This is more of a diorama slash example environment. So this is where our island is going to be right here. And I only want one capture point, so I'm going to delete these. We have our one capture point right there. Now that we've got the basic layout over here with the starting positions and the map entry points, I think the next thing is going to be to do the interactivity map. So this will close off these areas of the map to the player. So we'll just go something like 30. And we don't really want this area to be part of the map at all, so we're going to paint this over. There we go. Deselect all, and we're back to the normal mode. Now let's begin height map painting. So we're going to go up here and do select height map, and that will populate the properties panel over here with the options for the left click and the right click as well. Right now, right click is set to smooth and left click is set to additive, so it'll pull the environment or the map up. But also you have the set height brush, and this is how I do all of my flattening. So you have a flattening option up here, but I don't find it to be very useful. So usually I will use the set height brush option and then use the sample button to sample the height of the terrain at this point. So now it's at 10. And if we put this up to maybe 11 or 12, you can see that it automatically sets all of the terrain within this area to 12. And I think this is going to be the perfect height to do the outline of our island. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. Just do a simple little kind of atoll-shaped island. Alright, so we've got a little island-shaped landmass right here. Add some irregularities to it to make it more realistic. Alright, so now we've got our basic island. It's not very tall, but that's because we are going to push down the land everywhere else, basically. So instead of 12, we'll set this to 8. And increase the size to 18. And this is where we will add in our deeper water. And we'll leave a little bit of area exposed so that we can smooth this out later and not affect our island. Like so. So a little buffer area around it. Like that. And then we're not going to go in and smooth anything out yet. We're still just setting the height of the terrain. And we'll go down another 2 meters. So 6. And again, go around, leaving a little bit of buffer. There we go, and then I think for the entire rest of the map it'll be this same height. So it's not going to be super deep water, but it'll be deep enough to give the illusion of deep water. So we'll bump this up very high to something like 50, because we're going to be doing the whole map now. Alright, I've got all the major areas around it. We'll bump this up even higher and just get the rest of the map. And because these objects have a terrain lock, they'll just automatically go down. And we will fix that later, add little tiny islands for each team to start on. Alright, there we go. We've got our little island in the center with lots of surrounding open ocean. And then what we'll do to keep our starting positions okay, we are going to sample this area and put this down over here. And these will be our starting locations. And then we'll leave a strip of shallow water connecting these two so that troops can walk across the water to get to the island. And this isn't really for playing full matches, so I'm not going to really fret too much about how large of a landmass you have to start on, because it's frankly not necessary. And then we'll go ahead and sample right here on this embankment, so we get right where the water might meet the sand, so that the troops will be maybe like knee deep in the water, which is good enough for me. Put that right there. Have that connect to our island like so. Little land bridge. So now what we're going to do is smooth out these land masses and make them look a lot more natural. You can use the ramp brush if you really want it to look good and like a really gradual kind of sloping effect like that, and just repeat it over the entire island, which since it's a small island won't take very long. Or you could always just smooth it over with right click, which will be much quicker, but you won't get as gradual of a slope. And we'll do kind of a mix here with both the ramp and smoothing, just to add some variety. And just smoothing over here. So this part has a steeper slope into the ocean, and then back to the ramps over here. This ramp tool is extremely useful for lots of things. If you're wanting to make a hilly map or a map with lots of slopes, this will be your best friend. There we go. Now you've got a really nice gradual sloping area over here, and some more sharp areas over here. And then just to make things look a bit more natural, we'll lightly smooth these areas. This part of the map isn't the main showpiece or centerpiece, so it doesn't really matter too much, but might as well while we are here. Also smooth this land bridge out. Just the edges, because we want to leave the center at the same height that we set it at so that troops can walk through this water and wade through. Alright, so here is our basic sculpting done. You can see the stuff's underneath the terrain. We can just move that around a bit to pop it back up. Like so. It'll automatically readjust to its new position. And then while we're here, I'd like to quickly show how to resize your map, just in case you need to do that. I don't really need to do that with this map. This is already pretty much what I need, but I just want to show you guys so you know. So it'll ask you to save. You might lose some changes if you don't save. I already did save. Do you want to, or wait, no, I didn't. I should save. There we go. Scenario, resize. And I just want to make the playable area a little bit bigger, so I'll do 416 by 416. And do OK. And it'll take a moment and it'll resize everything for you. There you go. The line was right here. Now the playable area has been expanded to over here. And that's how you resize your map. Moving on, now that we have sculpted our base terrain, we are going to add some water to our island. And to do this, open up the Terrain tab, navigate down to the Object Browser, and look for Flood Marker. It should be somewhere in here. Water Flood. So go ahead and select that, and anywhere in your world, preferably at the height that you want your water to be at. So for me, I want my beach to be right about there. Right click, and you will add in your water flood marker. And if you hit play, you'll see that you have some basic water in your map. And you can see why we did the gradual sloping, so that we get this gradual fall off right here. Whereas you can see where I just smooth things, it's more of a sharp fall off. And with our flood marker still selected, as you can see here, you'll now have a water tiles section. Go ahead and open that if it's not already open. Go to default water, click on that. This is the water that is being used on your flood marker right now. So right now we just have the very basic default water, and we can see all of the settings over here, like the flow material, the foam material, wind factor, or waves calm. And you can see that immediately changes the kind of effect of the water. And here you can change the water color. So when it's up near the surface, you can see there's very little color change, but as it gets deeper, the water becomes much darker, and that's determined by this color right here. So we'll change this color to be more of a tropical feel. Bring the value up a bit so it's lighter. And there, we've got some relatively realistic and aesthetic looking water. As well as being able to change what the base water looks like, which is the wind material. You can also change what material or a normal map is added when you paint with the flow map. So right now we have waves light A set to our flow material. So if we go to our water flow map over here, click on this, we can generate a water flow map, which I recommend you do. And it's not going to have much effect because there isn't much shoreline here. But with this new brush, as you can see, the line is pointing sort of north. And if we paint with this tool, it's going to add this waves light normal map wherever we paint. So we can paint near the shore like that, and it'll look like the water is gradually flowing in that direction. And you can change the direction over here. like so. And as you can see, water is now flowing towards the island. So I'm just going to paint around the island really quickly. Add in some flow. Alright, now that we've got our flow painted in, you can see we have these waves light A flowing in towards the island, and we can of course change this and it'll change what kind of waves are flowing towards the island. Alright, so now that we've got our basic flow map painted in so that the water is going towards the island, let's paint in a new water tile, but this one we're going to change the color slightly. So we're going to go to the water tile section, right click on that, go to add, and now we have a new water tile that we can paint. Let's copy all of these options over here, so it's the exact same style of water. The only difference will be the color. There we go. Now let's change the deep water color to something much brighter, more colorful. Maybe something tropical like that. And now if we go over to our painted tab, we can select that we want to not paint this one, but paint the new one that we just made. And we can paint this in here. It'll have everything the same except the color will be a bit brighter. And we're just going to add this to select areas on the map, just to add a bit of color to the water and variance. Alright, now that we've got those in there, let's change our brush blend down to something like 0.12 and increase our size, and we're going to just blend these areas in with the rest of the areas, like so, just by lightly left clicking around the border with the low blend. And use the same thing for landscape textures, blend those as well. We'll get to that. So basically blending these hard edges in with its own natural. Alright, we've got that pretty well blended in. Let's make the size even bigger just to get that final, really soft sort of blend in. Just like that. There we go. Now when you're actually playing the game and moving around, it looks pretty natural and blended in. We'll go ahead and modify the deep water color just a little bit. It's a little bit too bright. Maybe something like that, just to make it all look a little bit more pretty. Next thing we're going to take a look at is the tile painting. Although before we do that, I'm going to smooth out these island edges really quickly. And I think I'm going to leave a few of these sharp. You'll see why I'm doing that later. Maybe leave that area sharp. More beach over here. Maybe I'll leave this area sharp right there. More beach, just again using the smoothing tool. Beach, moss beach. And then how about we smooth this area out, because this is where the other troops are arriving. But we're going to leave this little section here kind of sharp. Alright, so now we've got our little smoothed out beach areas. And you'll notice that the water kind of stops. It's looking weird like that because it's still registering the old location of the terrain. So we can update it just by moving this flood marker a bit, and it'll recalculate everything so it looks better. Alright, so let's get into the tile painter. If you navigate over to the left side of your screen and go down to the tiles section, if you click on this, you can see that right now the only material we can paint is the GB grid light, which is this grid you see. And if I right click, I will erase it. But there's nothing underneath it, so nothing shows. So to add more materials so that you can paint them onto your map, right click on the tiles button, go to add, and you've just added another material to your map. So now this will just be blank, it just says tile. Under properties on the right side of the screen, we can choose which material we want to paint. And let's choose a type of sand. And now, if we go over to our painter tool, instead of the properties in our painter tool, we can select which tile we want to paint, and we want to paint the sand, dirt, rocky one. And just like with the height map, just left click to paint, and you can paint that on there. And change your right click option from deleting or erasing the GB grid to erasing the dirt rocky one. And if you right click, it will erase those tiles. But we don't want this grid whatsoever, so we're just going to delete this. And instead of using this grid, we're going to change it completely to be another material. So I'm going to do that right now. And as you can see, it changes the entire material across the entire landscape. And this will be our base material. So I recommend that you choose a material that's somewhat bland and it doesn't have too much repeating detail. Like with this one, this would be a bad choice because it's very clear to see that this material is tiling, right? So you can see it repeating over and over, like with this little rectangular piece here. You can see how it repeats. So you want something a bit more bland for your base layer. Alright, so I've arrived at this material, sand slash ripples 01. I think this is pretty good. It doesn't have too much detail that's noticeable and repeating. Of course, you have this kind of V shape that's repeating, but once we blend this material in with all the other materials on the island, it'll be barely noticeable. So this is a good starting material, good starting point. And now what we're going to do is add a new tile that's much more smooth, so there's no ripples on it. And we'll use that to add some variance to the map. Alright, so I found this nice and smooth sand material. And this will go mostly around the edges, because ripples are smoothed out by flowing water, so there shouldn't be any huge ripples like this right where the water meets the sand. So we'll just erase that really quickly and go ahead and add in this. Feel free to leave some areas with more detail, again just in the name of keeping things interesting and varied, so it's not just all one material. Be kind of boring. So we'll go like this, add it all around where the water meets the sand. Alright, so now that we've got our basic outline done, maybe add a few bit areas over here just to make it look like maybe the sand is reaching up into there. There we go. It's kind of an interesting layout of color. And now we will blend it in with the rippled sand. So we'll go back to our rippled sand, except this time we're going to put our blend down to 0.12. I found that to be the perfect value for just blending things in with your landscape. And actually, let's do this smooth one. This will be better. So again, just like with the water, we are blending in these areas of texture by lowering our blend and just painting in around the hard edges to get rid of those hard edges. As you can see, it's already much smoother than it was before, and we'll come back later with ripples and add in some more detail later. But right now we're just aiming to get that smooth blend between ripples and no ripples. Alright, so now that we've got some areas of smooth sand with some areas of rippled sand, let's just add in some detail and paint in some ripples here and there, very lightly, again with the blend very low. Just make sure not to touch that intersection between the water and the smooth sand. That might make things look not natural. Now that we've got our two painted layers on here, let's add a third. This next one will have sand with some rocks in it. Should add some good variety. So we'll go to tiles, right click, add another tile. And this one we're going to do sand, smooth beige 01, I believe is the one we're looking for. Yep, so you can see there's got a few rocks in there, which is great. And as you can see, as we paint this in, it just adds a bit of detail to areas where there aren't. And use this somewhat sparingly because it might be a bit overwhelming if it's everywhere. Just in certain pockets. So now that we have our 3-layer simple landscape material with painted areas, let's go ahead and add yet another. This one will be grass. So we're going to go to add, new tile, and then we're going to find some grass. This one should do. Again, keep your blend low, and this time let's experiment with another setting, which is target. So right now if I paint, you'll see it just completely covers the textures underneath it. What you can do though is decrease the target so that the grass blends in with the underlying material by placing the grass at the lowest points in this texture. So in all these grooves is where the grass is going to be most likely to be placed. And the places that are high up, like the tops of the rocks, are the least likely to get grass on them. So let's lower this down to like maybe 180. And let's try painting now. And as you can see, it's leaving some areas of sand underneath it, so that it's not just completely grass like this, which can look a little bit unnatural. We might even lower it just a tad bit more just to get it to blend in even better. So we'll do the target, instead of 180, we'll do 160. And now when we paint, we don't have to be as careful because a lot of this is just naturally blending into the sand. Like the sand is kind of creeping into this grass patch. And then maybe later we'll come through and put the target all the way to 255 and paint in the cores of these. Like so. But you still have this outer area that blends in perfectly. So we'll put this back down and do the entire island like this. Sometimes when you paint in grass, you want to leave little pathways like this. You'll see if you look at reference photos from beaches in the real world, they oftentimes have areas where there's a lot of grass and then no grass and then a lot of grass and then no grass and so forth. So I like to create little kind of pathways with my grass. Okay, just sprinkle this in here where you think the map needs the most. And we'll actually go ahead and delete this, not like how it's placed. I want to set close to the water. There we go. That's up here, and again a little pathway around this piece. There's another little pathway. Go boom, 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 boom. Put some up here in these rocky parts. There's another little tiny pathway forming right there. And then later, when we go in and put splats down, we can use these kind of naturally forming pathways to put down some paths or tracks, maybe. So let's just do a little bit more, and then we'll go ahead and add in the cores of these patches so that they look more full. Alright, so put this back up to 255 and maybe lower the size to about 6. And we'll just paint in the core areas of this grass. So we have this nice lush core and we have the blending range as opposed to sand. There we go. I think that looks pretty natural. Some natural looking grass over yonder. And I'm thinking I actually want to put a building in here. So I'm going to think about where I want that and remove the grass from that area. I feel like I want to put the building right here. So I'll just repaint this real quick, taking that into account. Bring the target down again. There we go. We can put the house right here and have it have a little lawn, I guess. Or maybe we'll scoot it back and put a path through here. We'll see. And I'm noticing we don't have quite enough ripples over here, so I'm just going to add in a few of those just to add a bit of detail. Just a little bit. Just sprinkle it on there. There we go. Very subtle bit. Very subtle bit there. Now that we've done a bit of painting, let's go ahead and add in some objects. So the first thing I want to add in is the building. So I'll go to EBP's Environment, Buildings. And then before I place anything, I'm going to set buildings as the default parent. And I'm going to find a cool building to put in here. That looks pretty tropical, but might use that, but I want to see what my options are first. Alright, so I think I'm going to do this tower here, and then right next to it, we're going to put our cool little beachy looking Tunisian home. This tower is mostly for aesthetics, though, of course, because it is an EBP, your troops will be able to go inside of it. Let's do something like this. Drag that over there, and we'll put a little path through here. And then we're going to grab this tower, and maybe we'll put it on the side. Like so. And that's it for buildings. Players will be able to put their troops inside them and garrison them here and all that jazz. Now that we've got our buildings down, let's go ahead and lock that so we don't accidentally change it later. And let's start putting down some splat maps. I'm thinking some craters. Like this island has maybe been mortared for quite a while. So let's go to splats, set this as our new default parent, right click again, add splat. Now I've got this splat map in here. Let's make this bigger so we can see what we're doing with it. And I'm going to click remove grass because we don't want any grass spawning inside of our crater. Go to cover sand, and underneath these cover folders, these are all craters and areas that will give you and your troops cover. So if you go to the FX and get your craters from there, some of these might not give you any cover. So if you want cover, make sure you're going through one of these. I'm going to do crater dirt, no, crater sand. And let's click open, see what that looks like. Way too red. There we go, I think that's pretty good, more texture for this underlying painted map. One second thought, I think I'm going to use this one, crater sand one. This one looks a bit more natural. There's not as many stones in it. This beach doesn't have too many stones except for the few areas where we added them, so it makes more sense. So we will go ahead and find a few good locations for these mortar pits. Let's try 7. There we go. We'll have a few big ones, but most of these are going to be relatively small. So we'll put a mortar pit there, and we'll copy and paste it using Control-C and Control-V. And we'll move this one over there. Maybe we'll have a few over here. And now we'll add a few big ones. So we'll just Control-V to paste it, and we're going to change this to 10 and 10. And this crater will be much larger than these other ones. And put another large one over there. Alright, now we've got our little craters here. You can see some of the grass is poking through on them. We don't want that. So we'll just paint in more sand really quickly. Make sure our size is pretty small so you can accidentally affect our grass. And just repaint over this, that. Alright, now that I've got that fixed, I'm just going to rotate some of these just because right now they're technically all facing the same direction. We don't want that. We want variance as always, so I'm going to rotate those a bit. Now they look a bit more natural. And to finish off these craters, we're just going to select our height map, and we are going to use the set height brush, sample this location right here, and then we'll lower it by about a ½ meter, so 11.5. And this will just help the crater look more realistic and add some actual height to it. Set the width to maybe 5. And we just do one click, just push it down, and leave it be. Don't try and mess with it after you've set the height. And a little bit smaller, maybe 4. There we go, that's better. There you go. Now you can see that these craters actually are looking 3D now instead of just like a splat map. And then we'll increase this size to maybe 6 to do these bigger craters. There we go. Now when we play the map, our troops will be able to take cover in these and all that good stuff. While I have my height map brush selected, I'm going to raise the height of the terrain wherever there's grass just by a little bit, just to add a bit of shadows to this area, like these are little tiny grass bluffs. So we'll keep the size at 5, and we'll pick the height here. Right here it's 12, so again let's do 12.5. Let's just raise this up just a little bit. And we'll smooth over these edges when we're done. It'll look a lot more natural. Alright, so now we've got our little bluffs, and as you can see already they're adding a bit of definition to the terrain. You can see some of the shadowing here on these banks, which looks a bit more natural, and we'll just go over them and just smooth it out just a little bit. Moving on, the next subject we are going to cover and add to our map will be foliage. So we are going to go down to the terrain tab, click on grass, and right now we have no grass added, so we can't paint any grass. So to add some grass, right click on the grass icon, go to add. Now we have a new type of grass. With this selected, go to the right side of the screen to your properties panel, and here you can select what kind of grass you want to use. And so I think we'll just use really basic, just generic grass. So we got grass beach here, and you can see it's populated this thumbnail over here. Go back to the painter section, and now we do have something to paint with. We have the grass green beach. Select that, and now anywhere you click in the world, we'll add some grass. And we want to keep this almost exclusively restricted to the painted grass areas, because the painted land underneath it will help it blend in really nicely, as you can see. You can almost not even see the change between, you know, smooth sand to ripples to grass to then actual 3D animated grass. So I'm just going to do that to the rest of the island. There we go. Now I've got some basic grass foliage added to our mounds. And while we're here, we can go ahead and add in some bushes. So I'm just going to go back over to the grass button over here, right click, add, and back to the properties panel, and I'm going to find a shrub. Alright, so now we've got just a really basic kind of shrub looking foliage. And we're going to very seldom use this, but we're going to kind of sprinkle it over the grass areas again, just to add some variance, keep things interesting. Alright, now in select areas of the map we have our little shrubs. Looking very fine if I do say so myself. Next thing I'm going to do, I think, is add some trees, and of course it's a tropical island, and what tropical island would be complete without some nice palm trees? So let's go ahead and add those now. Go back to EBPs, Environment, Objects, and we'll look for Nature. Here's Nature. Trees. And we got all sorts of palm trees we can use. So let's find some good ones. That's a good one. And again, like I said, you can see that these palm trees are going to slash folder, so I'm going to go to foliage. That's there. Alright, so I think what we're going to do is use these palm trees as our kind of main ones, our big ones. And then we'll sprinkle some of the other variety in around the map as well. Put one back here maybe. Make this building look even more tropical. Got a palm tree in the back and all that. Add one maybe there, rotate it a bit. Another one right there, rotate that a bit. And maybe we'll make this one a little bit bigger. Actually, we'll move this one over here so you can see the building a bit better, because that is the main focal point of the island. Alright, now that we've got some basic palm trees down, let's add in some accent palm trees with these fan palms. Just these in there. Do I have a nice rotation one? Me too. I'll still have to rotate these. Here's a bundle of them. I love these kind of assets. These bundles are rows, I guess. It's great for filling in the map. Now I kind of create little balls of foliage, so things look more natural. Maybe one over there. A big row right over here. I think that's a big rows. Let's see what's got here. Let's go ahead and fan palm taller. I'll just add a bunch of these small ones. And since these are EBPs, your troops will be able to take cover behind both the trees and these little ones as well. Moving on, I'm going to show you how to make a trench system. So to do that, we're going to move this victory point a little bit out of the way, maybe over yonder. And then we're going to delete this crater, as well as this one. We might add them again over in this area, but we're adding our trench kind of like this. Like maybe the person who lives on this island built this trench to fend off people from the mainland. So we are going to start by flattening this area, because remember we put a dip in it when we were making our craters, but we don't want that dip anymore, so we're just going to smooth that over. As well as back here, just want a flat area for our little trench. And it's going to run from right about here, intersection here, go down that way, as well as going down this way. So let's actually move our victory point a little bit more even. There we go. Now, how I like to do my trenches is I like to lay out where they are going to be first, so I don't get confused later. So we are going to make a new folder and call this blockout. And this is already set as our default parent, so we don't need to do anything there. And we will go ahead and add a spline to it. And on that spline, we are going to attach a strip component, which will have a dotted line as its texture. We can find that dotted line by going to nm_UI and looking for the dotted line. There it is, dotted line. And as you can see, here we have it. We can rotate our spline and make it much less tiled, but very wide. Because I want this to be as wide as our trench is going to be, so it'll give me the visual. Maybe 26. It's about how wide our trench is going to be. And we'll increase the tiling to maybe 6. Yeah, let's do 10. Okay, so this is our little outline. Our trench is going to start right there. Then I'm going to hit spacebar so I can manipulate the spline points. And I'm going to move this just a little bit out, actually. And then with this still selected, I'm going to Control-C, Control-V to copy it in place. Or just copy it, not in place. Put that there. That's where the other part of the trench is going to be. And then right here, I'm going to put these control points so that they have a fulcrum to kind of bend around. I'll pull this down over yonder. Maybe add another one right there. And this will be the general layout of our trench. We might do a little box here for the intersection, but it'll be perfect for demonstrating how to build a trench. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new folder, call this trenches. And inside trenches, we're going to find the actual objects for it, because I like to lay those down first and then push the terrain down to make the trench, and then I will drag the trench walls down on the y-axis to fit them to the trench that I just dug. So we'll go to defenses, or actually I have to find these. They're never easy to find. There's trenches, trench wall. There we go. So here we have our basic trench wall. You see we have rocks on one side and the wooden posts on the inside. So I'll just arrange these where I've laid out my lines. And then, like I was explaining in the first video, you can Control-C, Control-Shift-V to paste that in place. And this then just drag it on the X axis. Control C, Control Shift V, drag out. Control C, Control Shift V, drag out. And now I'm just going to repeat this for all of the sides. As you can see, we now have our trenches built where our outline was placed. So now let's go ahead and use our height map brush to push down the terrain where our outline is. And after that, we will drag these Sanger walls down to be flush with the ground. Alright, now that we've got the terrain depressed, I'm just going to very, very, very lightly smooth it over just to get rid of the bumpies. There we go. Now we can select everything in our trench folder very easily, and we will drag it down. There we go. Now that these are flush with the ground, we can go ahead and delete our outline that we placed for ourselves. Not necessary anymore. Or actually, let's just hide it for now. We will have a use for that. So now, as you can see, we have a very basic trench put into our ground. And now I'm just going to quickly clean it up a bit. Alright, now we've got our basic trench set up with it flush with the ground. I'm going to remove this foliage and clean up the tiles a bit. And now I'll clean up the foliage that's in here. Now I'm going to add in a little bit of rocks in here using our tile painter. Just a few sprinkled here and there. There we go. And now we have a simple trench system, and infantry will be able to go down into here and use this as cover. And to finish it off, we are going to add some gameplay volumes, which would be the trench terrain marker here in the EBP's environment objects trenches folder. So what we're going to do is just go down to, let's use the blockouts folder we were using previously. And using the same spline, instead of just having this dotted line on it, we are also going to add a wall component. And this wall component is going to contain our terrain marker. So we add an entity, go to here, and click on the triple dot. And find trench terrain marker. And as you can see, it'll automatically add it on right there. And this terrain marker will make it so that tanks cannot crush these Sanger walls, and they can traverse over the trench. So without these terrain markers, if a tank was to drive over these, it would absolutely destroy them, and you wouldn't have a trench anymore. So you want to make sure you add these terrain markers here. And now that we've got our crush markers gone, we can go ahead and change this dotted line. And you're going to go to the, under splats, you want to go to gameplay modifiers. And instead of using the NMUI dotted line we're going to use the trench.r material. And this material is a gameplay modifier, so it will tell the game if troops are trying to get from this point where my cursor is to this point, instead of going around, they'll prefer to jump down and use the trench. So it's just a way to get the AI and your troops to basically prefer using the trench over other methods of navigation. So we've got that gameplay modifiers trench. We'll just copy this and paste it onto the other spline, replacing that dotted line material. And now we have a fully completed trench with the crush markers as well as the gameplay modifier strips and the Sanger walls. And the next step we are going to do is we are going to add some rocks to these sharp areas that we left. Make these kind of like little mini embankments or cliffs. So let's find some good rock objects. I think I might actually use art assets for this one, because I'm going to add my own custom collision in later. So we'll go to art, environment, nature, cliffs and rocks, and we will do the African set because there are a lot more options for the African set than for the Italian set. That's the main reason. So we'll just cycle through these and see which ones look good, which ones we want to use. These are way too big, but we'll get down to medium ones. I think this rock will work. So we'll just spawn this in here, and it is in our trench folder. So let's change this to our rock folder. And we'll just rotate that around a bit, find a good place for it. Press H to access the Y axis. And we'll just kind of find a home for this guy. Something like that. Control C, Control V, copy it, just use it later side though. We will position like this. And we'll spawn a smaller one here. Much smaller. And that covers it for me. So just again, position it even more relief. Something like, no, like this. Yeah, that works. So now we've got this little embankment or cliff area over here. And we'll do the same to all of the other sharp areas of the island to edge. Alright, now we've got some cool little rock areas over here, and we will blend these in with the terrain a little bit better by adding the rocky material around them. Okay, so now we have our little rock embankments. Going to add some scree just to blend it in a bit better. And as of right now, none of these rocks, because they are art assets, have no collision. So we're going to add that in manually with splines and collision blockers. So we're going to go up to the blocker splines, set as our new default parent, add spline. There it is. And we are going to add a wall component, entity. And the entity that we are going to add is a gameplay entity, blockers, GB move blocker. And when we regenerate all of our collision, this will prevent troops from walking through this area. So we'll make our spline real quick. Okay, now we have our blockers added to this area. And if we look at our interactivity map, or sorry, impasse map, we will see that currently we still have all of our collision from when we first made the map. So you can see this red ring around everything, and this collision that we just added isn't registering. So to make that register, we can go to deselect all, come up here, regenerate all, and now when we go back to our impasse map, it'll show all of our changes. And as you can see, our little land bridge right here. Oh, need to make a ramp right there. There we go. So now we've got our little island with some collision blockers for our rocks. And so now that we've set up our blocker splines, we now have collision around our art assets. Next, I'm going to use a combination of splines and splat maps to further detail the island's surface and make everything just look a bit more natural. And here we have on this spline with a strip on it, I'm going to show the colors option under appearance. So right now these footprints are sticking out quite a bit because they are not matching the color of the underlying sand. So to fix that, we're going to go into the colors tab, and it'll bring up this menu down here. Now this is time varying color. So on this side of the spline is over here, and this side of the spline, this point all the way over here, is this side of the color graph. So what you can use this for is you can have, say, one side be pretty dark, and it will, like a gradient, turn into the other material over time. So it'll be dark gray over here, how I set it over here, and then over time, over distance, it will turn into this color. But we're not going to do any of that right now. We just want it to match the color of the underlying sand. So we're going to use this color wheel to try and find the tone that we're looking for. Maybe something like that color. And we'll bring the alpha value down a bit. This will make it a little bit more see-through, so it's a little bit more subtle, just a little bit. And then we're going to copy this hexadecimal, Control-C it, and then click on this other point over here, go to its hexadecimal value, and paste that in there. And now we have a bunch of footfall that matches the color of our terrain. So we're going to use this, especially around the house, like people have been coming in and out of it frequently. So we'll just add another point there, another one there, and have it lead into the church or tower. And we'll have this kind of... Actually, let's have this curve around this path over here. Adding more control points with right click. And then to make these fade over time, again, we're going to stay in the colors option. And we are going to bring this value down quite a bit. We'll grab this one. Yeah, so this side is representing over here. So we'll add another point maybe right there, and then drag this alpha value down so that it kind of disappears and fades off into nothing. There we go. So now it looks like people are frequently traveling this path. Let's go ahead and just add a few more of these. So I'm just going to Control C, Control V, and I'm going to delete a few of these spline points because I don't need them. So we've just got this simple curved piece right here. And I'm going to position this like so. Like this little patio has been well used. And then I'm going to put one more down the length of the spline. So I got a copy, I'm just Control V, bring that in like so. Delete those control points, I don't need them. And then reposition these ones. I'll just copy paste that again, just keep things quick and efficient, and then delete that control point. And now our trench has a lot of this little footfall in there, like people have been running up and down it. Let's add another little section over here of footfall, like so, and then maybe we'll have this curve up into the trench. There we go. So it looks like people frequently travel this path as well as there. And next I'm going to see about adding in some erosion on this shoreline. Again, using splines. It's going to create a new spline, add a circle component, and we're going to find some erosion. Okay, so we've got some basic erosion here. Let's see what our options are. See if anything looks a bit more sandy. Definitely not that one. I like this one's gonna work. And it looks like the color's already matching the sand, but let's just make it a little bit less intense and lower its alpha value. It's a bit more see-through. Just a little bit, about 198. And now we are going to position our erosion spline. Just right here on the edges along the grass. And now you can see we have a little bit of erosion here, like the sand is maybe being eroded away. There we go, there's just some there we go, I got some subtle beach erosion going on. Just Control C, Control V this over here, just add it over there as well. And we'll add some over here as well. And just to get it out of the way, I'm going to add 2 strategic points to the map. So I'll go to EBPs, gameplay, strategic points, strategic point. And we'll say add one here on the beach on this side, and one here on the beach on this side. So now we've got some strategic points in there. And if we go to our territory map and initialize Voronoi, we will now have our new setup. So we've got the starting position for this team, starting position for this team, and then these 2 strategic points with the victory point in the middle. Now we've got our map looking pretty good. And to finish it off, I'm going to add some negative cover at the entrances for both teams to simulate, being out in the open in the middle of the water with no cover. So to do that, I'm going to go to, let's use blocker splines. So we will set this as our new default parent and add a spline like usual. Add a wall component and then add a entity. And for the blueprint, so we are going to go to environment, cover, cover area, negative. Now wherever these points are is going to be negative cover for everyone, both teams. So we're going to position this right there. Actually, we'll do width-wise, like this. So coming up the beach, you're going to be very vulnerable. And we are going to regenerate all and save. And the final touches on most maps would be the effects. So we're going to do that now. Looks like we don't have a folder for them yet, so we'll make a new folder, add, call this just FX. And we're going to find some effects. Some birds probably. So here we have FX wildlife bird goal flying. If we just right click in the world, you can see them spawn there, and if we turn playback on, we will have birds flying over our little island here. And we'll just have them fly over the middle, like so. We'll have them spawn off map though. That way you can't see them spawning in front of you. Alright, so now that we've got our birds positioned and flying, let's add some shore particle effects, just to make it look like waves are crashing. So let's search for that now. Here we have FX waves on shore. See what that does. Alright, so it looks like I need to rotate these about 180. There we go. So now we've got some crashing waves. Rotate them a little bit just so that they fit the shoreline better. And then move them over. There we go. And then we'll do the same thing over here. And pull them out so they're not on shore like that. Alright, now that we've got some cool little shore break effects going on, I think it's about time to wrap up. Now I'm just going to set up my details panel for my map. I'm going to do name island life, but I'm going to put a 2 in here so that I know how many players it can support. Description, live the island life, and stylized minimap enabled. Pipeline, we want to use secondary materials, splats and strips, and everything else is good to go. Alright, we are at the end now. If you followed this course all the way, you should have a pretty good understanding of how to use the editor and all of its tools and the pillars of an environment's creation. Now I'm going to quickly go over a few artistic ideas and principles. Mainly just the idea of groupings and how to make things look good. And a perfect example of that would be something like this, where we have not just a bunch of big shapes like these rocks, but we have these big shapes as well as small shapes. And this goes for everything, for textures, for groupings of trees, everything. Things just generally look better if there's some variance among the size and the shape, and so try and introduce that into your environments. You also want to maybe consider using these erosion splines quite a bit. You can get a really good looking environment with just straight up tile painting, but adding in some edge erosion or just some surface erosion like this really adds a lot to the environment and it enriches the visuals. So I would highly recommend looking into that when you create your first environment on your own. The last thing I want to go over are some lighting tips. It's just kind of, with lighting you want to make sure things look interesting and not flat and bland. If we had the shadow angle really high, it's very bright. It's a little bit boring. There's almost no shadows. Like these craters, you can barely even tell that they're craters. So just by lowering the angle a bit, you can produce some better shadows that are a bit more interesting. Something maybe like that. And the last step to any environment's creation is to double check all of your maps, make sure everything looks good. And then once you're sure everything looks good, go ahead and regenerate all and build your map. The final note I have to add is that now you have the tools to make awesome maps, but it's up to you to apply the techniques I've shown in order to make your own maps. All of the techniques and tools I've shown on a small scale with the diorama apply to working on a full-scale map. Think creatively to use the same tools and techniques over a much wider scale to make the map you want to make. Now, if you jump right into working on a 8-player map, the amount of work that is required to make a full-scale, fully detailed 8-player map may be overwhelming. I recommend you first start small and work your way up from a 2-player map up to a 6 or 8-player map. Alright my friends, we are at the end of the course now. I hope you had fun on the journey and enjoyed learning the ins and outs of the map editor. I certainly have enjoyed showing it. If you did enjoy the course and got something out of it, please hit the like button as it helps the course spread to more people. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments section and I will try my best to answer them. Along with using this course as a learning resource, I will also leave a couple links in the description of this video to other great Company of Hero 3 map editor teachers and resources. In the same description, I will leave a link to my Unreal Engine art Instagram in case you want to check that out. And with that, hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'm excited to see all of your awesome maps up on the workshop. Thank you for watching.